are the guys. And after watching this, it's crystallized. There was this template that was born for Superman a little bit too late. Now, given all the attention, all the talent, all of the world's might went to The Dark Knight. That Tim Burton Batman movie. The summer of the shield, of the crest, of the icon. We all remember it. I still wear my Batman underwear and my Jack Nicholson socks to this day. So we get this 90s Superman triangle era, as it's called. And it's the best collectively that the character's ever been company-wide at DC Comics. But it's maligned, it's short-sighted, it's overlooked. The course correction was the Superman animated series, aka Superman Adventures. And today we're going to look at a documentary. I'm pretty sure this came with a DVD or VHS. I remember watching it once or twice way back in the day. Since we're crazy for Superman right now, let's go through it. Let's look at it. That's what we do here on Sundays. When these guys, and it starts with Paul Dini, when they talk about the character and their choices and what is the methodology of their decisions, and you see it all here, it becomes clear that these are the reformers. This is a new template for Superman. Now, it's frustrating, it's sad, it's a little bit angry that this series, and it was based on merchandise. It didn't have the merchandise impact that the Batman the Animated Series had, that the Tim Burton movie had. Tim Burton Batman Returns. Creep out all the kids. You're still going to outsell Superman. Piss off McDonald's. You're still going to outsell Soup. Now, this is collectively across the board. This is the beginning of DC Comics becoming a Dark Knight period company. It's Bruce Wayne, Batman, and everything is second. I think what these guys do here, when we look at the series, when we look at even the introduction of Darkseid and how they rolled that in and the methodology around that. Now, that's another documentary, another segment. I'll bring that one to you guys as well. I think it's evident. I think it's clear. But I also think it's the clock. The clock is running out for the Man of Tomorrow. This series didn't have the impact people wanted it to. And at that point, in my view, the character has done nothing but spiral downwards. Now, given this is a 100-year-old character, this is a slow motion spiral. But what we're seeing this weekend, we needed the movie to universally align all of us. James Gunn had to do the impossible. Is it overreaching? Right? Like, is it even fair to expect that? But it didn't do it. And now this is where we are. So now, when we look at this character, when we look at the history and the media, even the musical, what do? We have to look back and say, what if? So this is one of the greatest what ifs in fiction, in my view, in intellectual property history. If this series hit, if it really did move the action figures, move the merchandise, move the socks, move the straws, move the Superman shield oats, instant oats, right? Like, you guys know what I'm saying. If it did those things, DC Comics would be a different company. But it didn't. And in my view, it's no longer a Superman company. It's going to get replaced by Batman. It's going to, and now when we do the company shot, we'll see the Dark Knight front and center. Disney has done so much outside of Mickey Mouse. They can just, once in a while, do a special edition Mickey Mouse hat. Let Target get the character for a t-shirt line or some crap. And that's okay. But as of Mickey Mouse becoming the absolute center of Disney, Superman will no longer be the absolute center of Warner Brothers DC. Let's check this out.
Superman is probably the most iconic of all superheroes. He's the one superheroes are named for.
He's the Nietzschean fantasy ideal all wrapped up in a red cape. The Superman.
He's bigger than life. He's just our modern myth.
I always felt I was different, even before you and Pa told me I was adopted, but how was it possible I could do these things?
Most people, even people who've never read a comic book in their life, they know the basic story of Superman. They know that he came from Krypton and he's got special powers because he's here on Earth. So on one hand, that stuff's a no-brainer. But at the same time, because it's so familiar, you don't want it to feel stale. So you do kind of want to put your own spin on it a little bit.
Originally, Bruce wanted it to be 40s. He wanted it to be a period piece.
We did toy with the idea of doing a very retro-style Superman show. I actually did a whole bunch of character designs that were very, very 40s looking. I mean, even more so than what we had done with Batman.
That would have made the show feel almost as though it was an extension of the Fleischer cartoons.
So I abandoned that approach, and I think for the better.
Bruce realized, no, the show has to stand on its own. So instead of having it placed in the past, let's place it in a sort of pseudo-future past.
Just what is your problem with Superman?
Everything's just so darn easy for him.
There was a joke at DC Comics, which was, how do you write stories about a character who can destroy the universe by listening real hard?
Did you hear that?
If you go by the comics, he can push a planet out of orbit. And, you know, if you go to that level, there's no story you can tell. The show's going to be over in 5 minutes.
Our Superman, in order to be believable, had to have limitations.
Nice one, Clark.
And if he struggles, then the audience kind of struggles with him. There's some drama there, because if everything is easy, well, what's the threat?
We pared his powers down so that our Superman could be probably killed without green kryptonite, with just a massive force of some sort.
We did Superman a few years after Batman, and in that time, we felt we had learned a lot of things about doing an half-hour-long adventure show.
It wouldn't be bad if people knew a little more about Superman. I don't want anyone thinking you're like that nut in Gotham City.
I think Bruce's thinking when he got the chance to do Superman, he decided to streamline the process, which would give him more control over how the finished animation would look. So you find that the lines are a lot simpler, there's a lot less folds on clothing. Characters are actually more cartoony than they were even in the Batman animated series.
It had a much brighter palette than Batman, and that was by design. We wanted to show that Superman's world is a bit more visually exciting, visually more optimistic than Batman's world.
Superman's kind of the flip side of Batman, so that necessitated the backgrounds being bright and colorful. The stories generally took place in the daytime.
We decided to modernize the characters a little bit more than what we had done on Batman. So even though we stuck to a classic Art Deco basis for the architecture, it's a much more optimistic version of Art Deco. It's not the angry, edgy, sharp-edged, ziggurat style that we had done on Batman.
The idea behind Metropolis was that the buildings were just coming out of the ground and going straight to the sky. All the streets were like elevated highways and things. So you had the scale of where Superman can fly around, and it feels like even though he's flying around, he still has this huge city to cover.
We so wanted to flex different muscles than we had on Batman. Batman, everything was, even though it had a lot of really, good high-adventure action scenes and stuff, it was still very much grounded in reality. Whereas Superman, you've got this alien from another world who leaps tall buildings in a single bound and does all this other stuff. It's kind of like, automatically you're playing with a whole different set of rules. So what better way to establish the difference between Batman and Superman than by starting the show literally on another planet?
When I I first got hired, designing the people on Krypton was the first assignment I had to do. And it was really like, oh my God. Because, you know, if you just start on Superman, well, you know what Superman looks like, you know what Clark Kent looks like, you know what Lois looks like. That's easy, but Krypton is usually the most 15 minutes in any story about Superman, and it's over. And then, of course, the first thing I was told was, don't make it like anything that's been done on Krypton. So I'm like, oh, geez, how do I do this?
It's so hard to find something unique because everything's basically been done. But the thing that we really wanted to avoid was making it look Earth-like at all. We really wanted to make it seem like an alien culture, everything from the clothes they wear to the architecture. Rather than going with the usual cliche of miles-high skyscrapers, we thought, okay, well, Kryptonians are so advanced that they've somehow managed to combine their technology and build their city in harmony with nature. So we started looking at organic shapes. So we started looking at shapes from nature, you know, flowers and plant shapes. So that's why all the buildings are somewhat asymmetrical.
Oh, Jor-El. Such a beautiful world, even up here. It's hard to believe it could all come to an end.
Bruce made it a home. He made Superman's parents these really loving, caring parents. And if you watch that first episode, they're touching a lot and they're kissing a lot. And they're two people who are really in love. So when their planet is destroyed, you really feel bad for them. You really feel bad about how difficult it is for them to give up their son.
Once he gets to Earth, he'll be safe.
I think it turned out really well, and it was really interesting to come up with the different motifs.
Good afternoon, Jor-El.
Brainiac, what an unpleasant surprise.
I did have one good idea. I did have my one good idea was, I said, you know, Bruce, it'd be interesting if Brainiac came from Krypton.
Should I not be saved above all?
You self-righteous monster.
Temper, temper, Jor-El.
I was a little bit resistant to it at first because part of it just me being a diehard geek and being a traditionalist and thinking, well, you know, Brainiac doesn't come from Krypton. Nobody ever did that before. That's just wrong, you know. And but somehow he was able to talk me into it, and ultimately I think it's a really great idea. I think it really works really well tying Brainiac into Superman's Kryptonian heritage. It's almost generational. I mean, he was Jor-El's enemy, you know, as much as he is Kal-El's enemy. And so I think that's kind of a neat thing.
You are your father's son, Kal-El. Headstrong, foolish, easily defeated, and ultimately forgotten.
Oh, well, an alien in my own backyard.
Lex is basically the architect of the city. He literally built Metropolis in our reality of the show.
I own Metropolis. My technology built it, my will keeps it going, and nearly 2/3 of its people work for me whether they know it or not.
He considers it his city, which of course, you know, once Superman shows up, then it's, you know, it's like, wow, hey, everybody loves him more than they love me. Well, that's, you know, this guy's got to go.
You will never control me, Luthor. Never.
Well then, I guess I'll have to kill you.
It was kind of fun and fresh at the time to portray a businessman as evil. He's not that evil. He just wants to call all of the shots.
The stories in Superman had to be larger than life against larger than life menaces. Whereas a madman like the Joker or Mad Hatter could easily propel a story for Batman, those guys, you know, would be, you know, easily dispensed with Superman. The powers got greater with Superman, so the threats had to get greater.
Hey! Hands off my hog!
The fact that Superman stories are grander, broader, it allowed us the freedom to do things that we couldn't really do on our first take on Batman. There was always an edict on the old show to make it believable and make it real. So there was no magic. And with Superman, it's like all bets are off. You have a character that can do it so much and a world that's so broad and so big. And we have the opportunity to have more fun with them.
At one point, Bruce asked me, you know, if you had a chance to go back to Batman or continue on Superman, what would you do? And I said I'd go with Superman. I was enjoying it. I was having a good time.
I'm proud of the show because of how good we tried to make everything.
We really reached the height of what Superman can be. Superman, his supporting characters and supporting cast are kind of what makes him Superman. That creates the whole world of Superman, and you really can't have Superman without those characters being around to work off of him.
When we started doing the show, you realize that, you know, not every story can be told with one guy.
Coming through!
Something going on I should know about?
Where have you been, Kent? On another planet?
Lois has traditionally in the comics been demeaning Clark for being very mild-mannered and timid, and yet she's always out pursuing Superman, either to find out his identity or else get him interested in her.
Nice S.
And that said, we didn't really want to do that version of Lois, even though that version does have a lot of charm of its own. So Lois had to become more of an equal for Clark.
The thinking behind their dynamic was to go back to the very first representation of Lois and Clark, which was they were competitors. They weren't necessarily buddy-buddy.
You want to keep up with me, you gotta be quick. I'm no tour guide and I don't hold hands.
They were really more competitors than even friends. Lois viewed Clark as a rival. She didn't think much of him, but she did respect him as a reporter.
Lois is still basically the, the go-get-'em, girl reporter. She's just instantly, appealing, but at the same time, she's not really somebody you want to mess with.
Big train wreck, 5 miles north. Someone was standing on the tracks, and right now I wish he was the guy who built the stupid elevator!
She's kind of bossy and kind of doesn't really give him the time of day. I think that's kind of a challenge to him.
If you got a minute, I'd like to show you my pictures.
Originally, the first design for Jimmy was the classic redhead guy with the bow tie and really goofy looking. He needed to be more hip.
Jimmy Olsen is an interesting character. He's a lot of fun. He is the youthful identification. It was tough to kind of figure out a way to make him fresh, to make him feel hip, and yet still kind of that nerdy little kid that's following Lois and Clark around.
We wanted to make him less of the, gee, Mr. Kent type nerdy photographer. We made him very much a kid of contemporary times, someone who's not above stretching the truth a bit in order to, sneak in someplace, take some photographs, take some risks in order to get what he wanted.
He was just a little bit cooler, but I mean, it's Jimmy Olsen. I mean, how cool can you make Jimmy Olsen?
It's a very traditional take on Jimmy. He looks a little bit more modern. He's got the the funky mullet and the baggy pants, but other than that, he's Jimmy Olsen. It's like you don't really have to reinvent those characters really from the ground up, because they're archetypes that have been around for 60 some odd years, and there's a good reason they've been around for 60 some odd years. They're good archetypes. They work.
Superman.
Hey, I like it. Superman. It's catchy, sticks with you, the kind of name that looks great splashed across 3 columns. Make it 4.
Barry White, Clark Kent's boss, good guy. We always got the idea he was like a great ex-reporter and someone, a champion of the little guy, someone who had not sold out to the big media moguls, and despite the temptations of the modern world was still going to put out the last honest paper in Metropolis.
Perry's sort of a gruff guy. Sort of no-nonsense guy, but he had sort of a father figure to everybody, bring everybody together.
He does yell at everybody, but he doesn't come off as a tyrant. There's still some caring in him.
We're gonna have to do it your way, Dan.
All right. Okay, move in.
Turpin and Maggie Sawyer were some characters introduced originally in the comic books and gradually became integrated into the Superman mythology. Superman doesn't really need cops around, but these two were kind of a nice mix. We had the cool, collected female officer who really knew her way around a gun and how to handle, advanced firepower, and Turpin, who you got the idea was like a cop from the streets who had worked himself up into the Special Crimes Unit.
You could have been in terrible danger.
That's why they call me Terrible Turpin.
He's a gruff cop who doesn't really think that Superman is necessary, that people can take care of themselves.
I want to bring Superman in on this officially.
You're kidding.
But when, the chips are down and Superman's in trouble, he saves him.
Dan Turpin was based on Jack Kirby and even was designed to sort of resemble him.
Bruce just wanted to turn him into Kirby, and we're all big Kirby fans, so, that was our homage to Jack.
Maggie Sawyer, tough, cool character, fun dealing with her, and again, sort of a nice contrast to what was going on.
She's the sort of opposite end of the spectrum to Turpin. She actually admires Superman to some degree, and she's a tough cop.
Get ready.
Now.
Hamilton served a purpose early on as someone Superman could talk to about science in Metropolis. We always imagined that Metropolis was years ahead of every place else as far as technological breakthroughs, and we needed to give that a face. So Emil Hamilton served that role very well. He was somebody who, through his job at Star Labs, was coming up with more benevolent solutions toward making life better. So he became a confidant and a friend of Superman's as far as someone Superman could go to help work up a new suit if Superman had to go into space or extreme conditions, or he needed some shielding against kryptonite.
Superman, if you can alter the trajectory by 5 degrees.
Dr. Hamilton is a scientist that also helps Superman learn about his past. So the Star Labs represent that science aspect that he doesn't have on his own.
And because the show does have a real strong science fictional base to it, you really do need a character who can be Mr. Wizard, who can explain the science of it all.
Let me guess. Martha sewed it for you.
What?
By the way, Clark, how are the folks?
Lana Lang was a lot of fun in that we had taken her out of small town Smallville and turned her into a very cosmopolitan young woman. We gave her this skill in fashion design, and she actually left the farm and gone out and made something of herself. And also someone who, remembered Clark from the old days and remembered the fact that he liked root beer floats and things like that. There's something very comfortable in seeing the girl next door again.
I like powerful men.
Lana, this is no joke.
Obviously, if you pay attention to the pilot, she clearly has to know who he is. She's seen him do things that no person can do.
Lana likes Clark. She doesn't really care about Superman, and the fact that Clark is Superman doesn't faze her one bit. She knew him from the beginning, so she knows what kind of guy he is, what kind of morals he has. So she really likes him, and she likes him no matter what.
Lana is almost like Clark's surrogate sister. She's kind of the sister he never had, and so then ultimately when they hit the teenage years and the hormones started kicking in, probably he was looking at Lana and she was looking at him in a slightly different way. But at the same time, I think there's almost a more brotherly and sisterly bond between them rather than anything really romantic.
It doesn't matter where you were born or what you can do, you'll always be Clark Kent. Superman just helps out now and then.
The decision to keep Ma and Pa Kent alive in contemporary times in the comic books came from the John Byrne series. And I think he realized that they were an asset to the Superman mythos, and it allowed us to have Smallville in the back of our minds to return to.
We kind of used Ma and Pa Kent as a sounding board for Clark because they're the only two people he can talk to about the problems he has as Superman, or trying to juggle his Clark Kent life and his Superman life.
They brought out a very human part of him, and you need that with Superman.
They are such an important part of the Superman mythos just because even though he came from two really wonderful Kryptonian parents, they basically died when he was still an infant, so they really didn't have a chance to mold him as a human being.
Superman was lucky enough to land on Earth and be adopted by these people who are still alive, and he basically is the optimistic side of being a superhero. So he has a family that he can go to and bounce things off.
Thank God for the Kents. Thank God he was raised by two God-fearing, wonderful people in the heartland of America who instilled in him a real strong sense of right and wrong from an early age. So, they're as much responsible for Superman as Jor-El and Lara are. Jor-El and Lara, they gave him his genes, but, Jonathan and Martha, gave him his morality.
Get your tail in here. Perry's got an assignment for us.
He's only as good a hero as he's surrounded by other terrific supporting characters.
Like I said, Superman is all about his supporting characters. They help make him relatable. To these two people, he's their son. To Lois Lane, well, when he's Superman, he's somebody she secretly loves, and when he's Clark Kent, he's a rival, All these supporting characters serve to kind of show you a different side of Superman and make him more human.
think I'd jeopardize the welfare of the planet just to settle my personal grudge with Superman?
We'd just come off of doing the Batman animated series and we did Superman, and the first thing we looked at was the villains and immediately realized that we were going to have to pump them up a little bit. We went back and did some research. Obviously, the main villains that everybody knows, Luthor and Brainiac, basically pretty easy to adapt to our show. But then once you get past Luthor and Brainiac, the next level of villains are characters like Parasite and Metallo, and they've got decent visuals, so that gave us something to play off of and interesting powers. But then once you get past them, suddenly you're into the realm of 50-year-old guys, a little bit overweight, wearing business suits. So we had to put our thinking caps on and come up with ways of making them visual and dramatically interesting.
You look at Superman and you say, okay, what could give him trouble? Concentrated light, that can give him trouble. A really great big charge of electricity could give him trouble. Might not kill him, but it'll knock him through a few walls.
The rush, the power.
His most effective villains are those people who find out what it's like to have an element of power, and not only do they misuse it, but they also make innocent people suffer for it. And that puts them directly in opposition with Superman, and when they go up against him, they will lose.
Hey, what now?
Coming up with the things that resonate for longtime fans, but also appeal to a newer fan who doesn't know about that history.
Come, let's look you over.
You can't just fight him with brute force. It's more interesting if you can fight him with intellect. And the smartest guy in probably all of comics is Lex Luthor. And he makes the best villain for Superman.
I would call that an understatement.
Luthor, for many, many years, he was just the mad scientist, and then he was like the renegade mad scientist in the supervillain suit, and then we kind of amped that up to the point where we actually said that he basically owns most of Metropolis.
He wanted people to know that Lex Luthor created Metropolis. After all, why would you build a giant skyscraper in the shape of a big L in the middle of town? You know, you want to sign your work.
He's basically the king of Metropolis, and then suddenly Superman shows up. You know, this town ain't big enough for the two of us, you know. One of us has got to go, and it's going to be you.
I think I have something to say about this.
A lot of the appeal of the character, I have to give credit to Clancy Brown, who plays his voice.
Quiet, please. The missiles will never make it here.
He'd originally had auditioned for Superman, but when he came in, he was just perfect as Lex. He was incredible.
I'd prefer to investigate this matter firsthand and alone.
He had this amazingly smooth, suave bit of class to him, so he was like half brute and half classy guy. It was a really good combination and just played it to the hilt.
That's coming out of your pay.
So we meet again, Lex Luthor.
Brainiac!
We got the story outline for the first episode where suddenly Brainiac's on Krypton. Well, in the comics, he didn't come from Krypton. I was initially reluctant to do it just because I'm very much of a purist, and I said, well, everybody knows Brainiac doesn't come from Krypton, and then I stopped and said, well, no, nobody knows that.
The idea that he might have been an AI presence on Krypton, that he was partly responsible for everybody not listening to Jor-El so that he could take time to save himself from what was going to happen, was really appealing. And I really pushed for that because I thought, well, this is a way of really giving the series a different spin right off the bat.
This is a really omnipotent being. This character has the ability to go out and absorb intelligences from all over the universe and then destroy them. And then he's got all of their information. He doesn't feel guilt, he doesn't feel anything. And that could become very dry. That could become a very boring performance if it's not handled in a very delicate way. And so we had to think physically how to depict it and vocally how to depict it that kept it interesting.
I calculated we would meet again, Kal-El. So I designed some improvements.
But did give Superman somebody with a bit of a history to hate. Yeah, he's clearly right up there next to Luthor in terms of arch eneminess.
Who am me? Where am home?
Bizarro goes way back in the comics, at least to the 50s, and every series has to have the evil twin episode, right? You know, so, you know, what better way to go than, you know, a guy who's wearing Superman's outfit.
You don't look so good. Leave me alone!
He could do anything Superman could do without any of the judgment behind it. Bizarro doesn't necessarily know he's doing something wrong when he does it. He's just literally thinking the first thought that comes to his head.
You know, stop missile. Krypton need missile.
first started off as a pretty decent clone of Superman, where he was good looking and smart and strong. And then, of course, started to lose his intelligence and his good looks and, you know, became this pathetic wretch.
We are not scrapping the project for one glitch.
Luthor created him, and he's not perfect. And yet, does the guy deserve to live? You know, Bizarro certainly thinks so, but Luthor just looks upon him as a failed experiment.
What am me?
Bizarro, that's what you am.
Because Bizarro is a character that looks like Superman, we thought, let's let the guy voicing Superman, Tim Daly, do the voice of Bizarro.
Superman! Me am happy to see you.
Likewise.
Bizarro let Tim Daly just go nuts. Gave him a chance to just let loose and be weird and energize things that he would never be able to do as Superman.
Me am Superman.
Sorry, my friend, but you am toast.
Metallo in the flesh.
Metallo is powered by kryptonite. So while he is a very strong robot who can cause a lot of damage on his own, the fact that he's got the kryptonite radiation weakening Superman when we're flying the ointment, if you will.
The big problem with Metallo is he's too powerful. All he's got to do is open up his chest and, okay, show's over, Superman, you're dead. We had to like really bend over backwards trying to come up with ways of keeping Superman in the game, so it wasn't just, you know, okay, I give up, Metallo's here, I'm running away.
Nice spacesuit. When I'm done with you, you'll wish you were on the moon.
Gave him the anti-kryptonite suit, which is the big lead suit. As long as Superman knew Metallo was coming, he'd have a chance to go to Star Labs and get the anti-kryptonite suit, which of course would always get destroyed in the course of the episode, and then you're right back at square one. Malcolm McDowell really nailed his personality.
My new friends from Intergang found me right where you left me. Dug me out and fixed me up as good as new.
There's this superiority attitude that Metallo has that I thought he embodied really nicely.
Bet you think you've got me. Well, surprise!
Mr. Mixel-Plick?
No one had used that version of him in so long, it seemed fresh and new to just go back and redesign that a little bit and tweak it, but basically it's the exact same design as was used in the comics from the 40s.
Superman! You, my friend, are the ultimate challenge. We're gonna have many merry games, you and I.
In a weird way, Mixie almost kind of thinks of himself as Superman's pal. Without me around, life would get pretty boring, and I don't really want to kill the big lug, but I do kind of like tugging on the cape every once in a while.
Mxyzptlk is all-powerful, really. I mean, he's one of the most powerful beings in the entire DC universe.
Superman always outthinks him. He can always trick him back, and that drives him nuts.
How does he do it?
Personality-wise, he's very much the way he is in the comics. He's just that annoying little imp from the fifth dimension that, you know, you just want to strangle.
For centuries now, I've been pitting my interdimensional magic against schmoes who thought they could go 15 rounds with the old master.
It was a real stroke of luck getting Gilbert Gottfried to play him. That was a big plus.
Kill Tipsy's him! Gosh, you're thick! Now, for the last time!
Other characters, looking at what they did in the comics, sometimes we just did not have a good visual. I mean, Toyman was the most extreme example. You know, Toyman didn't give us anything from the comics except for the fact that he used toys as weapons, which is a really good gimmick.
To me, the redesign of Toyman was the most fun. Basically, the idea came from this old ventriloquist doll that they used to sell in catalogs. And I guess a lot of people on the crew either remembered that or like me, actually owned one.
That was like a really great way to go with him. It was kind of eerie and creepy look, and this whole childlike persona, which was almost more like a Batman villain than a Superman villain. But that was all fine, because he did have the big, insane robotic toys that he could punch Superman around with, so that was all good.
He's probably one of the most disturbing redesigns, I think, of all of the Superman villains. He's not connected to what was already established in the comic books at all. He's a totally new interpretation of that character.
Parasite is not much different than he is in the comics. You know, he's basically this guy who's got the ability to drain Superman's powers. You know, there you go.
When he touches you, he also gets your thoughts. So he knows who you are and what your secrets are.
Don't be afraid. I know how to control my power.
That's what they all say.
Parasite is kind of like the wish fulfillment villain. He's like the guy who's powerless and yet he's envious of somebody else, so he'll take whatever he can get from somebody else. And the fact is that he can rob Superman of his powers and his memories, so he becomes a bigger threat. He can defeat him physically, and at the same time, Superman's mind is an open book to him, because there goes the secret identity. And the more power he gets, the more drunk on the power he gets, and the more he can't handle it. So he's a villain who can often be defeated through his own greed.
A few instances where we did create villains from scratch that didn't exist in the comics. We certainly wanted to create villains that were more visual and had more powers than the run-of-the-mill Superman villains like Livewire and Luminous. They're a little bit more science fictional in nature. They have extra powers, so they can conceivably be a genuine threat to Superman.
Looking for me, Livewire?
Well timed, Super Jerk. Let's rock!
We wanted to create a very strong female villain. The fact that we had a female shock jock who was out there throwing bricks at Superman made her interesting. Here was a character you can't totally dislike.
Uh-oh, do not use if plastic seal is broken.
Of course, once you became Livewire, it was just all about just being evil and just hating Superman and just wanting to kill him, which is fine. That's a perfectly good motivation for a villain.
Suddenly, she's in a position to emphasize everything she said about Superman. She can go after him in a big way.
Let's get to the heart of the matter.
I've always loved Lori Petty's voice. I thought she was able to make that character cute as well as bizarre, because the character's been infused with hundreds of thousands of volts of electricity. That's got to screw with your head a little bit.
Maybe this is the real me. But then again, maybe it's me. Or me.
Luminous wasn't even Luminous at first.
You know, don't you?
He was just this guy that Lois had spurned and was using nefarious ways of taking her out. And again, that was a very low-key kind of story. It was more of a murder-to-be mystery. But then when we brought him back, we upped him to supervillain scale and gave him his light and hologram powers, and definitely much more of a physical threat to Superman at that point.
See you soon, even if you don't see me.